Well, another summer in the books. The kids are back in school, football has started, and believe it or not, hockey is right around the corner. The end of summer also brings the busiest time of year for the region's EMS event medicine team as we wrap up the St. Paul Saints baseball season, power through 12 days at the Minnesota State Fair, and provide 24-hour medical coverage out here at the Somerset Music and Camping Festival, alongside the Somerset Fire Department and Lakeview EMS. And if you're watching this, it also means that the total solar eclipse came and went without starting an Armageddon and ushering in the end of times. So that's good, I guess. This month, it's all about being social. Big events, club drugs, and social media. It's September, this is Regions EMS Update, and those are the 3 things you need to know. Hi, I'm Dr. Bjorn Peterson with Regions EMS. We're camped out at the Somerset Amphitheater in Somerset, Wisconsin this weekend for a 3-day electronic music and camping festival. Unfortunately, these events tend to make the news for the wrong reasons. And if our experience over the past 5 years means anything, there's a good chance we'll be intubating someone here over the weekend. Most of the problems we see relate to recreational drug use, which we'll talk about in a bit. But the reality is that this is just another big event with a lot of people in a small area. We see a lot of the same medical problems that you might see at any large community event in your area. Mass gathering events, as they're called, can often be unpredictable. There are a lot of factors that go into the medical planning for events like this. The main goal we try to accomplish is to have adequate medical resources on site to avoid overloading the local EMS and hospitals. The community shouldn't have to sacrifice their emergency medical care just because a big event is in town. For a good example of that, check out this news story from Tampa Bay, Florida from earlier this year.
Happening today, thousands of people coming here to Tampa for the Sunset Music Festival.
And this event is surrounded by controversy after 2 people died last year and nearly 90 others were taken to the hospital.
ABC Action News reporter Isabel Rosales is live by Raymond James Stadium to explain how leaders are working to prevent that this year. Good morning, Isabel.
Good morning, Lauren. The heavily criticized festival is in town and kicks off today at 3. From local police departments to area hospitals, the city is stepping up to handle those large crowds. Tampa Police and Fire Rescue says that they are increasing the number of officers and paramedics available this year. Last year, Florida Hospital Carrollwood received 29 patients in just the first night of that festival. This year, they're adding more staff and supplies.
Whether it's a marathon, a pie-eating contest, or a goat rodeo, the one thing we can't control is the weather. Now, we've been talking about music festivals, but really this applies to any event in your community that draws more than a few thousand people. If you happen to be in a leadership role with your agency, we've developed a medical planning matrix that's been endorsed by the state of Minnesota and would be happy to help you advocate for medical resources at any event in your community. For everyone else, most of the medical care you'll be providing at a mass gathering event is dependent on the weather. But don't worry, there's a guideline for that. And here's what you need to know. Any care provided under the Special Event Rehab Guideline does not require a full patient care report. All of the treatments are non-invasive, but at least it gives you some clear guidance on who can safely be discharged from the medical aid station. If the patient has a specific complaint, no worries, just do the right thing and make sure that if you move beyond the Special Event Rehab Guideline, you complete a full patient care report. The treatment principles are pretty straightforward. First, reverse the environmental stress. Get the patient to a sheltered environment and either warm them up or cool them down. Next, have them rest. Sit in a chair, lie on the ground, hang upside down, whatever works. Just make sure you get a good 15 to 20 minutes in to let your victim or patient recover. And finally, hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. As long as there's no vomiting, you'd be surprised what a bottle or 2 of water can do for a weary traveler. They might come in looking like a staybroom case, but most people can rally with a little bit of rest and hydration. The best part is you kept someone at the event, out of the hospital, and protected a local EMS resource for the community.
Hi, I'm Dr. Carrie Haley with Regions EMS. I'm the newest addition to the Regions EMS Medical Direction Team, and I'm here at the St. Croix Valley Drug Task Force in order to talk to you more about drugs that we're seeing in our communities. I think we all know how to handle an opiate overdose, and we know those that take crack or meth probably just need a hug from 6 police officers or a syringe full of ketamine. But that's not what we're here to talk to you about today, and that's not what I'm interested in. Here's what you need to know. We're able to meet up with a few people who might be able to enlighten us a little bit more about this subject. I'm here with Kirk Hughes from the Minnesota Poison Control Center and also an officer with the St. Croix Valley Drug Task Force. Other than the drugs that we normally see, the crack, meth, the opiates, what other drugs are we seeing out in the community these days?
We deal a lot with methamphetamines in our communities, especially in this area. A lot of marijuana or synthetics, we do see that, not real often, but we do come across it. Our festivals do bring in some other drugs that we deal with a lot with MDMA and the ecstasy or Molly.
Well, we can divide them into a couple of groups. First of all, you have the downers, which are generally your narcotics, your opioids, your heroines, your fentanyls, which we're not really addressing today. Then you have your stimulants. And there's a couple of different classes of stimulants. So your cocaine, your methamphetamines are straight stimulants. But then you have these club drugs like MDMA, N-bomb, bath salts, all these things that are hallucinogenic amphetamines.
What kind of forms are these drugs coming in? What do they look like?
A lot of what we see for the ecstasy part are pills that are stamped with their own design. We've seen bunnies, dogs, turtles. They've come in powder. It was called brown sugar that we dealt with a couple days ago is what they were calling it. It was a brown powder rather than a white powder that we typically see.
How might you see these people when you encounter them out in the streets? What kind of things are you seeing them come up with?
A lot of things that we're seeing is carrying around large amounts of water, dancing like nobody's watching, erratic movements through crowds, not caring who's in their way.
Well, we'll see our traditional, we'll see wide pupils, your mydriasis. We'll see all the typical stimulant things, diaphoresis, so they're sweating a lot. They have potentially agitated, high heart rates, high blood pressures, potential for seizures, and potential for hyperthermia or high body temperature. Now, when you add that on to the hallucinogenic aspect of these drugs, you can go ahead and actually get serotonin released. When you get too much serotonin, that's the part that causes the hallucination part of it.
So, Kirk, with the different types of kind of synthetic drugs out there and that we're seeing, so, they maybe had stories from mom and dad doing their LSD back in the 60s. What is the difference now with the drugs that we're seeing?
So the acid or the LSD that maybe our parents or grandparents used at Woodstock during the free love period was a totally different type of substance. Basically, when people utilize that, they put one little drop on a sugar cube, they put it on blotter paper that had all kinds of cool psychedelic stuff on it, and they tore it off and sold it for $5 or $10 a hit. They put it underneath their tongue and away they went. As long as they were in a safe place and didn't climb up somewhere thinking they were a bird and jumped and died secondary to trauma, they generally did fine. Some of the strategies of the drug dealers now are they're calling it the same thing, and it's really N-bomb, otherwise known as Smiles, acid, or LSD. It's not really the LSD that the parents or grandparents use. This is a powerful hallucinogenic amphetamine that has been responsible for deaths in the region here from hyperthermia, seizures, extreme sympathomimetic outflow.
Does it really matter when we come up onto these patients what they've been using? Does it change our management at all?
It can. So the first thing is safety. If somebody's actually has excited delirium from using a bath salt, N-bomb, or these newer ones they're calling acid, which really aren't acid, they can be very violent individuals. And if you don't have basically the right kind of sedatives to go ahead and combat that, or number one, you have to get the sedative to them. So it needs to be something that's IM. And so thankfully, Versed, your midazolam is IM, and ketamine is very, very effective in these individuals to go ahead and calm them down. You don't want them to fight too much. And so number one is your safety. Number two is going ahead, and if they're kind of that constant on switch and not really totally with it, but having all those other types of symptomology, we need to get their body temperature down. We need to get them out of the hot environment and cool them down. and they're not going to be easy to cool down until they're mellowed out or until we sedate them. And ketamine seems to be the best agent to do that with people in excited delirium.
So Kirk, what's going to kill a person with the drugs that they are using?
Well, they can have tachyarrhythmias. When you get too much tachycardia, obviously you can go into a VTach or VFib. The bigger things, though, are the hyperthermia. So we've seen body temperatures of people using bath salts and that sort of thing in the excess of 105, 106, 107 degrees. And as we know, when you get that hot, our body denatures things, and we can resuscitate them from a cardiac standpoint. But sometimes they've gotten their organs too hot and changed the nature of the proteins in their organs, and they won't perfuse anymore. So hyperthermia and seizures are probably the biggest two things that cause serious outcomes.
Thank you both for all of your great information and the time that you took with us today. Remember that in addition to the MRCC, Poison Control Center is a wonderful resource for you as an EMS provider for any sort of toxicological problem or emergency that you encounter.
From the days of AOL to MySpace and now Facebook, most of us have a hard time remembering a day without social media. In fact, most of you are probably watching this video because you either saw it on the Facebook or you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Social media is definitely a big part of our lives. There are some great ways we can use the powers of social media for good. But for all the fun of reconnecting with your father's, brother's, nephew's, cousin's former roommate, as defenders of public safety, we need to understand that there are implications for putting our lives on the interwebs. There are a couple of things you should never do on social media. One is you should never post anything to your profile during your duty to act window. This is the period of time during which you have a legal and a moral obligation to actively engage in public safety. Typically, this starts when the tones go off and ends when the incident is complete and all patient care has either been transferred or terminated. It just doesn't look good to have anything posted to your profile when the public expects you to be doing something else. Another thing you should never ever do is post any patient information online, even if it's only remotely identifiable. Even if the information doesn't include a face or a name, we need to be very careful about posting anything even remotely linked to an incident or a patient. If someone can figure out who you're talking about with even minimal effort, then you've probably entered the HIPAA gray zone, and that's definitely not a place you want to be. And finally, don't forget that nothing is ever private online. Anything you post can be shared endlessly and seen by anybody, even if you thought the original post was private. Reputations can be built or lost on a single post. And don't forget that you always represent your agency to some extent in the eyes of the public. So think twice before posting a controversial opinion or a criticism of another healthcare agency. And just to be clear, I'm not calling anyone out here. I'm just trying to look out for you. Well, we're about out of time. I think Shrimp Nose is about to take the stage. Special thanks to Lakeview EMS, the Somerset Fire Department, the St. Croix Valley Drug Task Force, and the Minnesota Poison Control System. And since we're talking about social media, check us out at regionsems.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where all of our previous video updates can be found. And as always, be smart, be safe, and be professional. Gotta run.